Okay, looks like it is the top of the hour, noon, and we'll get started. We'll just run through some slides first, and we'll kind of get into the meat of the GoToMeeting here. A little bit about the interface. If you haven't been on one of these with us before, a little bit about your GoToMeeting interface. What you have here, if you look at what I'm showing on screen, first thing is that minimize button. It's the orange arrow. If you push it and it goes to the right, essentially you get a little bit more of your screen, so it makes it easier to see some of the things that are going on. Also, there's that raise hand. We won't use that very much, to be honest with you, but there is that raise hand there, so if you ever need to raise your hand. You can, if you look at the audio portion of it, you can connect through the telephone, or if you do have mic and speakers that are working for your machine. So either one. You can't use both, obviously, so if you do use a telephone, you will need to dial in. And then also for the questions part of it, if you do have a question throughout the broadcast as I'm presenting, we will answer those at the end, and I leave about 10-15 minutes open at the end of the hour for question and answers. So if you have something, go ahead and type it in whenever you have that question, but it will not get answered to the end, and I should be able to get through all those, and I'll leave enough time for that. A little bit about myself. I'm Ben Givehand. If you've been on these before with me, you have heard me do a number of different presentations on a whole bunch of different stuff. This is just obviously the milling part that we'll go through. I'm an application manager for customer-driven technology. We are a value-added reseller. For those of you that are not familiar with the VAR idea, if you work for a larger customer, you might work directly with PTC, and you might deal directly with PTC, but for the guys that are $250 million in revenue and under, they deal directly with what is called a value-added reseller. And in short, and I'll talk about this other stuff you see on the screen here, but in short, you think of PTC as Ford, and we're the Ford dealership. So we provide software sales to the small, 250 million isn't necessarily small, but for the smaller companies, education services, implementations, consulting, and the whole nine. We do support, as you see here, all of the PTC or most of the PTC solutions that they have out there. So whether it's Windchill, education, or implementation or consultings, Creo and ProE, MathCAD, and Arbortext, we do have very capable engineers on staff that have been in the industry, not only in the industry, but also worked as either with PTC or under the VAR idea for a number of different years. We do provide migration and integration services, and again, whether that's through Windchill ideas or it's integration services through just ERP ideas, we provide that also. We do provide support, or I should say our engineers do provide support. Please realize that your main go-to technical support is with PTC, but we have a few capable guys on staff, and we try to answer questions and get back with you as soon as possible whenever we possibly can. We do have PTC certified training centers in the locations that you see below in Kansas City, and Arlington, which is essentially Dallas, and then in St. Louis. We've been in those areas for a number of different years. We do have actual staff in those cities, and what makes that unique is that we run classes for even one person. Just the other week I ran a milling class for a gentleman that works for Browning, who makes guns, and it was just him, and we got a lot of good stuff done. So it's kind of unique about things that we do, since we do have full-time staff. We don't have to fly people in and pay expenses. We will run 1 and 2 people classes, and again, that's a benefit for you because you get a lot of specialized attention. At any point in time, if you feel the need that you do have some training needs, you can contact myself, and I'll put my information, or Rosalinda, she's up there also, and then you also at any point in time could go to our website that you see down below in red, and then go to the training portion of it and then inquire. If you do, or if you have training needs and you do not see that training class on the list, please feel free to contact us. We do often move and alter our schedule to make way for classes if we don't have a student or students in the class, and you have a desire, we can gladly put in any class that you would like in its place and run that for you. So we're pretty flexible with what we do. It gives us the chance to make a good relationship with you, and we'd like to take full advantage of it. In big CDT news, CDT was acquired by Barry-Wehmiller Incorporated, which is a St. Louis company, and that was finalized about 2 weeks ago. For those of you that are familiar with CDT, for the most part, it doesn't change how you will interact with this at all. What it does is that it gives the backing of Barry-Wehmiller experience in engineering consulting and ERP consulting. They were looking to get into the PTC, and we were looking to grow as a company. We were doing well as a value-added reseller, and they were looking at us, and we were looking at each other and got together and decided it would be a good thing. PTC supported this, and it's a good thing for not only CDT but also for Barry-Wehmiller, and then also for our customers. It gives them pretty much a one-stop shop when it comes to not only PTC products but also engineering consulting and ERP consulting. And as we're putting this integration between these two companies together, again, if you're not a customer of ours, look at us. We'll be able to help you out in a lot of different ways. So it's a good thing for CDT and a good thing for Barry-Wehmiller, and we're looking forward to the future. All right, so here's the agenda. We're going to ask some questions here in just a little bit, but the agenda that we'll cover is kind of a split between introduction to what is Creo, Creo Parametric, the milling package now, how it exists in Creo Parametric. And it's the introduction to that, a little bit of that, but it's also some tips and tricks that if you are using the PTC products, things that you can use that might help you out. So agenda that we'll start off with are what are the different packages that you can get from PTC when it comes to any of the CNC programming. We'll talk about, for those of you guys who are using it, some of the milling and lathe configuration options. What are those that you can use that will help you out and set some standards for you. We'll get into quite a few just general tips and tricks. We'll talk about why, if you are using Pro-E and Creo models, why you want to use the machining packages from Pro-E. There's a really big specific reason, and I'll show you that and show you the benefits of that. And then for those of you that are interested and are actually using PTC products for your CNC work right now, very few, this is not necessarily a public thing, but whenever I have a student that comes and takes class, essentially PTC, the uppers at PTC, they have essentially what is called an advanced machining project. And what happens is I can get you invited to that. And what it is, it's a ton of tutorials and advanced tutorials on 4-axis, 5-axis, lathe stuff. I think there's actually some tool. I think there's some tool information that exists. And what it is you get invited, and if you want to be invited to it, you get invited, and you have access to all this information that you can use and apply to your everyday work. So I'll put that information up at the end and how you can essentially contact me, and then again I can just invite you to that. It's not like you pay for anything. You just get an invitation from PTC, and then you can go in and grab that information. The Q&A at the end of the course, or in the course, at the end of the presentation, we'll again leave some information, or leave some time open, 10-15 minutes, so that you can ask any of the questions that you need. Okay? So right now, what we're going to do is you're going to see some questions pop up on your screen, and as you see those questions, go ahead and answer them, and when we're done, we'll move on to the interesting stuff. So Rosalinda, will you please throw those questions up for them?
Here we go. Okay, Ben, just so you know, the percentage of our viewers that are using PTC CAM solutions is 61%, Master CAM 33%, 17% are using Gibbs CAM, 0 are using Esprit, and 11% are using other CAM software.
Okay, very good. Is that all for the questions? Are we done with the questions?
There are a couple of more.
Okay. Good.
Okay, we've got one more. And that'll do it. It's all yours, Ben.
All right. Thanks a bunch. Appreciate it. Okay. So let's start out with the packages that PTC offers. If you are in the market or at least looking at what PTC machining, the machining packages that can do for you, you'll be looking at really 3 different packages that PTC offers. The first one is called the Prismatic and Multi-Surface Machining Package. And really what that provides is all 3-axis milling and then 4- and 5-axis positioning. So you can't do 4- and 5-axis movement with the prismatic and multi-surface machining, but you can position them. So you can turn an index head or your 5-axis machine at an angle and do machining, but you actually cannot move. So that is the very base package that PTC offers. It's the prismatic and multi-surface machining package. So 3-axis and 4- and 5-axis positioning. The production machining package that PTC offers, it's the stuff that we just talked about or that I just mentioned in the prismatic package, but you also get lathe work and then wire EDM. Okay, so 3-axis milling, 4- and 5-axis positioning, the lathe package that comes along with production, and then also wire EDM comes along with the what is called the production machining option that PTC offers. The very last one that you see, the complete machining, is the high-end one. It's the prismatic plus production, and then also what you get in the complete machining is 4- and 5-axis movement. So you can move in the 4th and 5th axis movement at the same time while you're doing regular 3-axis milling. That is the breakdown of the offerings from PTC. So for those of you that are using it, you should know you might know the packages, and for those of you that are looking into the software, those are the breakdowns, and obviously there are cost differentiators between the 3. Okay, so those are the packages that you are offered. Okay, so for those of you that are actually using the software at this time, when I teach some of these classes, and even I have guys that come that have been using the software, a lot of times what you find is that they've been put CNC software or PTC CNC software in front of them, and they kind of just told to go. And they kind of take bits and pieces from a number of different areas, and they kind of just learn on their own. And when you do that, you're not shown some of the other things that you are capable of in the software. Okay? So just like there are config.pro options for a number, or I shouldn't even say a number, for all of PTC's products, whatever they may be, there are specific config options for the milling packages. And again, it doesn't make a difference which one we're talking about. The milling packages, again, from PTC. So here are, for the most part, there are a few other ones, but here are kind of the more popular ones. And a lot of these, what you see here, essentially direct Pro-E or Creo Parametric in the machining software to look at specific places. For instance, this config option that you see up top, up here, this one tells you when you save a tool where the tool should be. So if it was on a server that you wanted to put all of your manufacturing information, or if it was on your C drive, essentially what you have is a config option and a pointer to a specific folder. And as you save or as you open up tools, they will come specifically from the location that you set. Any parameter files, and that includes the saved parameter files. It also includes any site files that we'll talk about. Any of those files that you want to save or pull up at any given time, if you put this into your config.pro options, again, instead of you having to navigate around and find that stuff, you have a centralized location that everybody can work off of. The work cell directory config.pro option is for the machines that you set up. So if you have multiple machines that you set up, you have your Haas and you have your Fadal machine, you can always create those within the software, and as you save those and want to recall them, or as you create them and as you save them, either way, as long as you have this config option set, it can point to a specific spot. The next option you see right here is you can actually tell the software if you want it to always put all of your outputted CL, your NCL or CL data files and post-processor your actual G code into a specific folder if you want it to, and essentially that's what that config option does. So it condenses where all of your toolpaths are all over the place, and in different folders you could drag them into a specific spot or have it automatically go into a specific spot if you'd like. Your post-processor directory, for those of you that are using the software now and you don't have this set, essentially when you go to post-process a file, you get a list of about 20 different post-processors that you have to kind of navigate through. If you put your post-processors in a specific folder and have this option set, instead of seeing all 20 of those things, 20 of the posts that you'd have, you'd only see the ones that you actually used. These two that you see at the bottom, the manufacturing start model directory and the template manufacturing NC, these are your template or your start part config options. And for those of you that are used to that have used this in Pro-E, it's no different to where when you say file new, you start out with a specific file and it has specific things in it. That's that template manufacturing NC. As long as you set that and point it towards a specific file, then you get that specific file, and you have a lot of things that might be automatically set up, and I'll show you a good example of this a little bit later. And then also, if you do metric machining and English machining and machining for customer A and machining for customer B, and there's a lot of different scenarios that you could map to this idea, instead of you having to choose one every single time, you could put all of those different styles of start parts or different ways that you want to machine, and again, you can do a lot of different stuff with this. You can put them essentially into a folder, and as long as you uncheck that template button when you said file new, you would get a list of those, and then you would get a choice of the one that you want to use. And I have a lot of customers that use this because they do different things with their start parts. They have start parts that are specific to certain machines, or they have start parts that are specific for English, or start parts that are specific for inch stuff. Okay. So for metric and inch. So these are good options to use. Whenever I go into a company, I'm helping them kind of get going with their machining stuff. I make sure we start getting this because, again, it gives a good way to organize and get everybody on the same page as far as some of the things that we just talked about. The last one that you have right here, I added this one into this little slide that I have kind of late. For those of you that are using the software right now, oops, sorry guys. For those of you that are using the software right now, one of the things that you notice and that you deal with on a given day-to-day, again, depending on how you have the software set up, is the filling out of your parameters, or essentially toolpath behavior. When you're filling out, I want it to be 1,000 RPMs and 50 inches a minute, and I want to go this depth, or I want to step this far and step over this far. What you have the ability to do is automate the fill out of those parameters, and there's a number of different ways that you can do that, and I'll cover that a little bit as we get into the actual demo portion of it, how you can automate the filling out of your parameters. But one of them that you can do is there is a config.pro option. Essentially says manufacturing parameter. I want you to copy or auto copy from your tool all of the parameter information into your parameters. And the value would be set to always, or I think it's actually set to all, excuse me, it's all. And then what happens is, as long as you have your tool set up that has your parameters, it'll actually drive that information from your tool into your parameters, and you don't have to set that information up every single time. I've walked into a number of different companies where they have guys that are typing all that information by hand every single time, and it leads to fat fingering and crashes because you're going too deep, or an extra long time because you're going too shallow and you're recreating stuff all over. So there are ways to automate the parameter fill out. This is just one of them, and I just wanted to show this up here for config.pro options. Okay, so from here, I'll actually get into some demonstrations. And again, for those of you that are just looking at this for the purposes of just kind of seeing what it's about, you'll see a little bit of that. I'll create a few toolpaths from scratch. For those of you that are seeing some of the updates from Wildfire 5 and back to Creo, you will see some interface. If you want a little bit more of a specific demonstration, we'll be happy to give you that. But in the time frame that we're working in, that's kind of tough. And again, for some of the things that we're trying to show, we're just kind of give everybody some ideas. All right, so what we'll do here, I'll go ahead and fire up Creo Parametric. We'll talk a little bit about Creo Parametric and some interface things, kind of like I do with all of the Creo interfaces, or the Creo demos, I should say, that I do. We'll talk a little bit about that. But what I'm going to do here to start out with is I'm going to talk about a little bit about the start part idea. Now, a lot of times when you go into customers, or at least when I go into customers, and they haven't had a whole bunch of guidance on the start it up and get things going, is that for those of you that are using software, when you say File New and you do hit the manufacturing button, and I have to do this because mine's set up a specific way, is that when you start a toolpath file, an actual toolpath assembly, essentially what you have here is really just an assembly with manufacturing ideas on top of it, okay? And what you have to create is this manufacturing environment to start out with. And so a lot of times what you'll see are users come in, and every single time they get in, they're creating an operation, they're picking a machine that they're going to use, they're doing a lot of this button pick and click. They have to set their machine coordinate system, they have to set up their clearance plane. Okay, a lot of these different things that you come in here and you set up, and I've seen this done a number of different times. You're coming in here and you're pick and clicking, you're doing this, you're setting up your stock materials, and you're doing all that every single time. And then not until that point can they actually start machining. And so some things that you have the ability to do is automate those functions. If you have multiple start parts, and again, you can take this down a number of different avenues, but what you can do is automate all of those little button picks and clicks that you have, and then just alter them from that point. And you can create start parts that satisfy a number of different situations. So if I had, again, the Fadal machine, or I had the Haas machine, or some other type of Toyota machine, or whatever it may be that I'm actually doing work on, instead of me having to apply it or create it every single time.
Welcome to GoToWebinar, web events made easy.
And then you're starting to make tips. Okay? So what I'm going to do here is, you saw the picks and clicks that I did to get to that point, and what I'm going to do is go ahead and close this file down. And what I'm going to use is my little standards that I have to get this done. So let's go ahead and erase that. There we are. This time I'm going to say New. I'll say manufacturing file. I'm going to leave this check mark. We'll go ahead and leave the name alone. We'll say OK. And this time what you see is all of that information has already been built into it. So instead of me creating the operations and then again creating the machines and setting up the retract, all I have to do is go ahead and put in my model that I want to work with. Okay, put in my model that I want to work with right here, and then go ahead and then assemble that model to the exact spot that I want. And I forgot that I don't have a coordinate system here. Let's go ahead and assemble that a little bit of an old-fashioned way. There we are. Okay, and now I'm ready to machine. If I had a coordinate system that I could align to it, I would just pick the two and it'd be a little bit faster here. But as you can see here, what I did was eliminate 10 different picks and clicks and a lot of different setup that I could have the possibility of kind of messing up, but it just makes it easier for you to get started and kind of go ahead and attack what you actually need to be doing. So let me go ahead and change this here real quick. There we are. Okay. All right, so just a little bit about, again, setting up start parts and how it makes your life a little bit easier on your end, so you can get to the point of what actually is going to make you money, and that is actually creating creating chips. Okay? All right, so just a little bit about star parts. The other thing that we'll talk about is actual tool files. Now, for those of you that are using older versions of the software, if you are, and again, I don't know if you are, Wildfire 3 and Wildfire 4, what PTC did, at least in the Wildfire 4, I believe the release was, is start to convert what your saved tool files were. They used to be, I think when you save it, it was a .tprm file or something like that, and now what they are .xml files, okay? And so what's interesting about this is that you have a lot of things that you can do with your .xml files. And a lot of times customers and users don't take advantage of this. So what I'm going to do here is I have a number of different tools that exist in my little tools directory. I don't have it set up so they show right here. They would usually if I had that set up. But I'm just going to go ahead and pick a ball end mill, essentially a half-inch ball end mill. Okay. Now, this stuff is pretty straightforward. Essentially, you have just a edited tool that has a standard shape, and you change shape for. But what I find is a lot of customers don't fill out this information right here in the cut data. And so what this allows me to do is regulate speed, feed, depth of cut, and step over based off of a material and an application. And then what I can do is fill this information out based on these two ideas and the tool, put in my cut data, and then save that to that .xml. Now, if I have multiple materials that I am using, I can fill this information out against multiple materials. And whatever the material is that I have selected in my operation, it will automatically adjust to whatever I have saved for that time. Okay, so if you fill this out one time, if you go back in again and you start something fresh and brand new, when you start your operation and you say I'm going to have aluminum, when you go in to pick your tool, you will automatically have this information filled out. Now, where does this become useful? It becomes useful because you can drive this information into your parameter files. Okay? So what you have here is aluminum, and then I have a number of other different tools, and I don't remember if I have these tools set up. Okay, yes I do. So I have a roughing application for copper. Here's this information. And aluminum, this is this information. Now, what happens is as I go in and create this tool, and as I update this information, as long as I hit save, what it does is save this information back to the .xml file. And I should have opened this up here. Give me a second to go get this guy. Here is that tool, and what I'm going to do is open this up. I wish it wouldn't have showed it like that. What we're looking for here is this information. I know this is, sorry guys, this is a little hard to see. I didn't know it was going to show it this way. It's just how the file showed up. Now, let me see if I open it and if it shows up a little bit different better. Instead of editing it, I'm going to open it. Ah, there we go. Okay, much better. All right, so what you see in the .xml file is general information. You talk about the length, the cutter diameter, but what you see here is the tool material, what is the application, and the information for speed, feed, and depth of cut. And then what you see a little bit lower is copper, the application, and the ideas or the values for speed and feed. And again, as I save that, all it does is continue to append this .xml file. And so all that information is stored into that spot, and then from that point it is pushed or can be pushed into your parameters. So again, you are not typing all of this information out over and over and over again. And again, as long as you set it up one time, it makes it a lot easier for you, again, for you to make sure you get some standards into your parameters that you're going to use. Okay? All right, so a little bit about that. Again, if you have a few more questions about that, I always can elaborate a little bit later on, and maybe not during a webcast that we have. All right, the other thing that you have here is that one of the things that a number of users deal with is that if I come in and we'll just create some simple little surfacing toolpath, okay, we have some information right here. One thing that you find is that, you know, let's back up. Let me show you this in a little bit different way. Okay, so what happens is if you just by default use the Pro-E out of the box or Creo Parametric standards that you have, okay, so okay, is that a lot of times when you go to fill out your parameters, you have a lot of different parameters that you have the ability to fill out, okay, a lot of the ability to fill out. And if I look up all the possible parameters for this toolpath, here are all of the possible things that I can change about behavior. Okay, all of these things I can change specifically about behavior. Now, for the most part, most of us aren't going to change 80% of these things. And so really what they become are things that kind of get in the way from you finding really what you want to get at quickly. So here are all of the parameters. And notice how I also have to fill out the cut feed and the step over, and I'll show you how you change that here in just a second. Okay? But all of this information is what I have to fill out. Now, what I can do here is apply something called a site file. And what a site file does is that it regulates and then also standardizes what you see, okay? So I'll go ahead and activate this guy right here. And this was set up before. I just had to take it away so you could see what it was like before. But I'm going to say tool. There it is. There's my tool. Say OK. Notice how the cut feed is filled out. The step over is filled out. If you come down a little bit farther, you see that the clearance distance is filled out, which is always open, and the spindle speed. Now, the ones that have the equal next to them are the ones that came from the tool. So not only does the site file have the ability to automatically fill out the information from the tool, notice how I'm also in the all of it. And notice the amount of parameters that I have. It's just the ones that are meaningful for what I'm going to use. Again, if you're not using 80% of them, why show them? The site file allows you to take off parameters that you're not going to use and also standardize those parameters. So if you have a machine where your coolant is always on, by default in the machining software it's always off. So that's something that you would have to change every single time. So in this case, what you can go into is your site file, make that standard in your site file, apply it, and then that coolant would always be on, and then you don't have to deal with it. Okay, so a really good way to standardize the parameter fill out as far as speed, feed, and depth of cut. And one more thing, just because I've brought it over from the tool doesn't mean I can't change it at this time. So whether it's a good starting point that you're going to use, or if you have standards that you absolutely are going to follow, bar none, these are going to be our speeds and feeds, because we've done this a million times, then you can have the ability to do that. Okay, it's always a good thing to do. It makes it easier, especially when you have new users that are coming in and learning things. It makes it easier because you can put some of the automation into it. So some of the automation up front with the start parts, and then also some of the automation with the tool information and the site files that makes it a little bit easier for some of the things that you're looking at. All right. I'm going to go ahead and we'll come back to this guy a little bit later on. Okay, I got a lot of information. I'll have to pick up the pace here a little bit. One thing that let's do this here real quick on this. Let's do it right here. I'm going to create a quick trajectory mill, or trajectory milling toolpath. I'm going to go ahead and use, there we are. Cut data is already filled out, even though it might not necessarily be right. We'll say tool motions, and I'm going to go ahead and pick the edges of this part. And there we are. We say we want to go that way. We want to offset the cut. We want to offset it to the outside. Okay, now, what I did here was just created a quick little tool path that runs around the edge. Okay, pretty simple function. Now, quickly, I'm going to come in and change the parameters of this guy, and I'm going to step it down a few times. Let's just say we're going to step it down 10, and then we're going to put in step depth. We're already at 0.1. So what you're going to see here is a little bit of change, and it's going to step down a few different times. So there we are. It's going to step down. Now, let's just say, again, for argument's sake, that this is a roughing sequence. Now, if I was going to use essentially the same idea to create a finishing sequence, right, in this case another trajectory that did finishing, all I have to do is change one parameter and be done. So what can you do? Can you actually copy and paste this toolpath right here? Yes, you can. But what you have found is in previous versions, or if you've never done this before, is that copy does it within the machining software. You don't see copy, and you can do Control-C and Control-V, but you kind of run into this this interface that you have. Now, what this allows me to do is Control-C and Control-V work well for trajectory, which you see right here, but you also have the ability to do it out of something called the Process Manager. So what you have in the Process Manager is the ability to pick toolpaths, okay, do copy, and then do paste, okay. I'm going to pick it, we'll put it right here, and then do paste. We'll paste that trajectory, and again, what I can do from this point is come in and then just edit the parameters that I wanted to change, and it would be the number of cuts. We'll put it back to 1 as soon as I find it here. Number of cuts, we'll put it back to 1, say OK. And what I've done is copied and pasted that toolpath. There we are. Say OK. There we are. And now, when I play this toolpath, all I did was a copy and paste. I didn't have to pick anything. I didn't have to set up, excuse me, I didn't have to set up my parameters or my tools. I didn't have to repick geometry. I just did a copy and paste, changed the one parameter that I want to, and then I was able to create that toolpath. Now, the trajectories actually work well for Control-C and Control-V. All of the other toolpaths, they have a little bit different of an interface that pops up, and that's why I use that Process Manager. In the Process Manager, you can do quick copy and paste out of the Process Manager, and again, duplicate toolpaths quickly and over again. If essentially they're the same thing with just a few changes between one to the next. Okay? All right. So that's copy and paste. Let's see, where are we at for time? Okay. A few things that I wanted to show you for this. For those of you, again, that are using the software, a lot of times if you ever create mill surface or mill surface geometry, a lot of times when you copy things like this, you'll copy this for the purposes, okay, for the purposes of extending, okay, you then can come in and say, hey, I want to extend all of this. I want to extend this out a little bit, right, creating geometry where you can extend it out if you want to. One of the things that I have noticed, and that if you've never done this before, let's kind of start this all over here real quick, is that if I come in here and create this mill surface, is that you have these holes, and those do affect the behavior of your toolpaths, right, where you have this hole. If you've never done this before and you want to patch holes like this, okay, what you can do is you can come into the Options tab and notice how it says Exclude Surfaces and Fill Holes. What I can do is pick that, and it says I want to fill holes, and I want to fill this hole, and notice how it fills that hole fairly easily just by filling the hole. Now, I actually think that's something that was in previous versions of the software, but it's just a way to, again, when you do copy and paste for mill geometry for a number of different reasons, you have those gaps, and it easily fills in gaps, whether it's whole gap that you would see, and that we want to do it right here, or a gap that you see right here. It fills that up, and essentially what you keep is the same geometry, the same contours that you would have before, and now it just machines over the correct way. Okay? So, quick little help and tidbit about that. All right, now we're down to about 7-8 minutes. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and close this down. And I'm going to go ahead and open up the straight cut. You know what? Let me do this here real quick. Yeah, I'll make time for this. Let me make time for this. All right. This one right here, what I wanted to show you is this is a typical voluming sequence that you would create. And hold on here, guys. Let me so you can see this. Is that this is a typical voluming sequence that you would create. Okay. And what you get here is a lot of airtime cutting if you are cutting castings. Okay. If you want to do voluming or hogging out type sequences, and you have just a casting or a ½ inch worth of something or a ¼ inch worth of something, that you do a lot of air cutting in these situations. And if you were machining out a big giant block, this is perfectly fine, but not everybody does that, okay? So what you have the ability to do is in a voluming toolpath is conform your shape or the top shape of your toolpath to the shape of what would be something called a mill value. Okay, and what I'm going to do in the mill value is I'm just going to come in and create, in this case, a fairly rudimentary shape that emulates what would my casting be. So I'm just going to come in and say, this is what essentially my casting would actually look like. And you could put in things that are a little bit more accurate than this, but this gives us a good idea of what we're talking about here. Let me go ahead and put in the center line, axis of revolution. There we are. Okay, so here we are. Let's go ahead. So now what I have here is I'm going to trim. All right, to that part. Okay. All right, let me go ahead and drag my toolpath down. And what I'm going to do here is, instead of me having that toolpath, which you see right here is not going to be any different just yet, okay? But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to say, instead of just going down from the top, I want you to pay attention to the top surfaces. Okay? I want, oh, there we go. No volume, there it is. I want you to pay attention to the top surfaces. So here's the mill volume, and then I want you to pay attention to that and that top surface. And there we are. I will play this path. And now what you see here, slow this down, is that notice how it pays attention and conforms the shape to the top, and you have some difference, you have some pickups that you have right there, but it actually conformed the shape, and you don't have all of that milling that started off all the way at the top. If I changed the way that it was machining, you wouldn't get all these retracts. But it has actually conformed the shape to the mill volume that we're using, instead of just doing a whole bunch of air cutting out here. I know this is a bunch of air cutting, but don't pay attention to all the retracts that you see. Okay, so a way to conform the top shape, or essentially the shape of a voluming toolpath, and you have to use a mill volume to do something like that. All right. For those of you that are looking at why to purchase the software here, one of the big reasons why you purchase the software is to create, or is because you're using Pro-E parts. Okay, so if I come in and create a quick manufacturing file, here we are. Go ahead and put in the part that we want to machine. Okay, there we are. Let's go ahead and turn the shading on so we can see this. I'll create here a quick toolpath. We'll just create a quick trajectory. We'll use the flat half-inch end mill. There it is. Pick our tool motions that we want. We want to follow this guy and that guy. We do want to offset it. We'll offset it to the inside. So a pretty straightforward little toolpath that I have. Nothing overly big. But the idea here is that once you are using Pro-E, all of these things are, Pro-E models and Pro-E machining software and drawings and assemblies are all related to each other. So if you have Pro-E parts, and if I come in and if I have a design engineer come in and make a change to a part, so let's make that change. Let's go ahead and open up this little family table part that I have right here. And if I come in and if I have a guy come in and say, instead of it being 8, I want it to be, this big, okay, this big right here. I can go ahead and regenerate those changes. I come back to my machining file, and then all I have to do is regenerate all of my toolpaths. So now what happens is all of the toolpaths adapt to the new geometry. Okay? And that really is the power of using Pro-E models with the PTC softwares, because again, since they're all connected, so if a design engineer at any point in time throws a change at you, what you can do is, instead of rebuilding all those toolpaths or exporting IGES files and step files into other software and then having to recreate them or trying to tie everything back together, as long as it's a change, you have the ability to come in and make that change, go back to your machining software, do a regeneration, and any toolpath that was created against it will update as long as it's capable. You know, there are a few limitations, but as long as it's capable of working, it will work. And as you see here, all I did, again, I didn't recreate the toolpath. I just went in, hit regenerate it, and it used the same geometry and recreated that toolpath. I can output it, and I'm ready to go. Other things that you have, those of you that used to the regular Pro-E functionality, if I right-click and say replace, notice how I can replace with family table members. I can replace with unrelated components. So again, if this was a family table of products, if I had 100 of these and I had 50 toolpaths, all I would have to do is come in and replace this part with the next one and then hit the regenerate button. All of my toolpaths would regenerate. I could output them, and I would have code immediately for this part. Okay? One of the biggest things, that's got to be the biggest thing if you're really looking at this, if you have Pro-E parts, there's a reason why you want to use the PTC machining software. Okay? All right, so just some tidbits about the associativity part of it. I had one more thing that I was going to show you, but I think I'll hold off on that for at least right now. Okay? All right, so for the most part, that ends the demo portion of this. And what I'm going to do here is, for those of you that are using the software and that you would like to be invited to the Advanced Machining Project. Again, it's not like you're going to get spam emails. It just gives you access to a lot of different advanced tutorials. Please feel free to send your information to the email address you see on your screen, and I can get you invited to that, and you'll get an invitation, and you'll have access to a lot of different tutorials and things that can help you. Okay. All right. At this time, okay, if there are any questions, please type a question into the question and answer portion that you see on your screen, and I'll leave this now open for the last 10 or 15 minutes. So if there are any questions, please feel free to ask those questions now. If not, for those of you that don't have any questions or you're not interested in seeing if any questions come across, thanks for hopping on. Again, hopefully you got some good information about this, and we'll hopefully see you in the future with some of the other things we're going to put on. So thanks a bunch. For those of you asking questions, please stay around. If not, feel free to go ahead and jump off.
I don't see any questions yet. Just so everybody knows, we'll be putting this on our YouTube page as well, and I'll be sending the link out to everyone.
Rosalinda, you were a little choppy, so I'll if nobody heard that, there will be a replay of this on the YouTube channel. And Rosalinda, do we send that out in a link to our attendees or not?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so you will get an email with a link to the YouTube video of this. So if you want to look at it a little bit later or show this to someone else, you will have access to this webcast. All right. Doesn't look like any questions are coming through, so we will go ahead and end the webcast at this time. At least we don't believe any questions are coming through. We've sat here for a little while. If for some reason we cut you off, and you know what, I'll give you, I'll give you another 4 minutes just in case you are typing. If you're not typing, go ahead and just log off, just so I know we're not cutting you off.
I guess we can wrap it on up now. We've got 2 people left, and I don't think there are any questions.
Okay.